One of the really neat features of the lockers is when you open them up, every locker features a little hidden locker inside of it. And every one of these lockers is a booze locker that was designed and installed during Prohibition. That way, the players would get done with their round and still be able to have a wee drip. It's part of the history here, so even the new lockers get built with that little booze locker, as they call them around here. So the benches here at the club are as old as the club itself, and you look down and you can see all these old pock marks from the old metal spikes. You literally have the footprints of the game's greatest players, Bobby Jones, Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, Tiger Woods. They've all changed their shoes on these benches, and literally their footprints are stamped into time. The history and the heritage here is so important to the membership. It's the reason why, our clubhouse is the way it is. The legacy dating back to the Fowneses and every subsequent generation, they've always wanted it to feel how Mr. Fownes intended it to be when he opened this place in 1903 and into 1904. So, the heritage here, the history here is so important to the members, to the staff, trying to give the modern amenities but keep that historic feel to the club. And I think we've done a fantastic job of that. When we talk about Oakmont, it always makes the most sense to start from the very beginning. And the gentleman that is the reason that we are here today is this guy right here. His name is Henry C. Fownes. He was born in Pittsburgh in 1856. And just like the majority of the wealthy elite in Pittsburgh at the turn of the century, Henry made his fortunes in iron and steel. He and his brother owned a company called the Cary Furnace Company, which is over in Rankin, PA, along the Monongahela River. And at one point, it was one of the most profitable blast furnaces in Western Pennsylvania. So profitable, in fact, that it was sold to Carnegie Steel in 1898, which made Henry an incredibly wealthy man at a relatively young age. So a couple years go by. In 1903, Henry and a group of guys create the Oakmont Land Company, and they purchased this original 191 acres here in Oakmont to create what became Oakmont Country Club, which is officially incorporated in June of 1903. That fall, Henry and a team of 150 men and 24 horses and mules set out to create arguably one of the best golf courses in the world. They created the layout that is now the US Open host for this year, Oakmont Country Club. The golf course opened on October 1st, 1904. It played at 6,406 yards and a par of 80. And there are plenty of people around that'll tell you it should still be a par 80. But what Henry created here at Oakmont has withstood the test of time for the last 120 years. The way he created these green complexes, the angles of attack into these greens, the undulations of the land, it is what makes Oakmont one of the most difficult golf courses on the planet. And it's a reason why, despite all the technology and all the, the athleticism of today's modern golfer, it is still one of the toughest championship tests on the major rotation every year. As the golf course opened in October 1st, 1904, the clubhouse opened with it. The clubhouse here at Oakmont Country Club was designed by a local architect named Edward Stotts, who designed numerous buildings around the city of Pittsburgh. But when it comes to the clubhouse here, what Henry wanted was more of a quaint Scottish farmhouse that would blend in to the surroundings. And as you play the golf course, when you're out especially on the far side of the turnpike, the clubhouse really kind of blends into the surroundings. It doesn't necessarily stand out from a distance. But as you return to the clubhouse up number 9 and up number 18, the clubhouse, kind of reemerges with you on that walk, and it becomes, such an important part of the landscape. And it's a testament to Edward Stotts and what he designed for Henry back in 1904. The original budget for the clubhouse was $25,000, and when Stotts was done, it came in at about $38,000. So quite a bit over budget, but Mr. Fownes was happy with what Stotts provided, and it's been a part of our culture since the very beginning.
The building is basically symmetrical with 3 gabled sections, and you see here the use of half timbering, which in England or in Tudor Revival architecture generally would probably be brown. You most often see it painted brown, but it makes perfect sense that here it's painted green to sort of reflect the landscape. It would have been a very, very welcoming place to enter after playing on this course. It really does exemplify the sort of domestic English that Stotts was looking for. And I would think that the Fowneses were extremely pleased.
So the original clubhouse is the structure here from this tall gable over to the other tall gable. This area here, the ballroom and the Fownes Room, wouldn't be added till later. The ballroom gets added in 1925. So when the club first opened, players would come in from town, get dropped off at Holton Station here in Oakmont, and they would take a horse and buggy taxi up the hill. You would come through the main gate, and you would come around the drive around this corner here. And the front door was actually right here on this set of steps. You would get dropped off by your horse and buggy here. You would go in the front door, go upstairs, change your shoes, come back down, and then return to the first tee, which is right here to my right.
This was the original entrance. One of the most interesting architectural features of the clubhouse, I think, are these fan lights, I guess you would call them, around the doorway. It's kind of exemplary of the building in that the style of the building is a kind of what Stotts called domestic English architecture. And so there's a very human, homey kind of character to it. It's a really lovely embellishment that sustains the domestic character of the clubhouse at the same time that it lends a little refinement and elegance to it.
So the one question we're always asked when it comes to the history of Oakmont is, when were women first allowed to play golf here? When were they first allowed to become members? Ladies have always been welcome to play golf here. Henry Fownes' daughter, his nieces were all very prominent golfers at the time. So women have always been a major part of Oakmont's history here, even if their tournament history didn't necessarily start on the national level until the 1990s. But this is the ladies' locker room. It is arguably one of the best spots in the clubhouse for the ladies to hang out. Beautiful original wood lockers with the metal lattice. Every locker is built to the same specification, so even if they add lockers, they try to recreate it as best they can to this original look. And the one thing about the ladies' locker room that is significantly different than the men's is the ladies' locker room is air conditioned, which the ladies are very appreciative of, where the men's locker room has never been air conditioned. And if the gentlemen have their way, it most likely never will be. But the ladies' locker room offers, just the great amenities that the same amenities really that the men enjoy, and even more so because of the air conditioning. So this is the men's grill that we're standing in right now. During the golf season, this is the guys' solitary hangout. They could come in here, have lunch and dinner. During the off season, the ladies are allowed to come in and have dinner. But during the season, it is the gentlemen's hangout. And, this is really the one room in the club that's kind of geared more towards the members. All of the champion boards are on the wall in here. The president's board is on the wall in here. And it's really just a great room to sit down and have a meal. You have the 18th hole right behind us here at the clubhouse. You kind of get a beautiful view of the golf course as you sit here and eat. And it truly is one of the most special rooms in the clubhouse. Welcome to the iconic Oakmont locker room. This is one of the rooms that really is still a throwback to the old days. The locker room here in Oakmont has changed very, very little over the 120 plus years of the club's history. All the lockers, even the new ones, are built to the same specifications, this style wood with the knobs, the metal lattice. And one of the really neat features of the lockers is when you open them up, every locker features a little hidden locker inside of it. And every one of these lockers is a booze locker that was designed and installed during Prohibition. That way the players would get done with their round and still be able to have a wee drip. And even till this day, as they're built, they're still built with them, even though obviously Prohibition is a thing of the distant past. But it's part of the history here. So even the new lockers get built with that little booze locker, as they call them around here. So the benches here at the club are as old as the club itself, and you look down And you can see all these old pock marks from the old metal spikes. And most of the benches here have not been touched over the 120 years. So you literally have the footprints of the game's greatest players. Bobby Jones, Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, Tiger Woods. They've all changed their shoes on these benches, and literally their footprints are stamped into time. So one of the important amenities for any locker room is the showers. And there are several members here that will tell you that Oakmont has the best showers in all of golf. And we have a very traveled membership that have played some of the best courses and clubs across the globe with these shower heads and the water pressure and everything. They say it truly is one of the best amenities in all of golf. So one of the unique things about Oakmont, the cell phone policy, in the locker room you are allowed to use your cell phone, but they still ask if you're going to make a phone call that you go into one of two remaining phone booths. So you can go in there, you have a little desk to take notes, and it's really just a throwback to a different time. If you go to make a phone call, this is a thing of the past for most places, but in a club like this, it's still a major part of our history and a major part of Americana. Here at Oakmont, the members game is known as the SWAT. It dates back to W.C. Fownes and the founding of the club, and it is played weekly and on every holiday. We have records dating back to the 1950s, and this room here is the men's SWAT room. So every Wednesday, Friday, and weekends and holidays, the SWAT goes out. This room here is where they congregate. The teams are formed. They come in, get changed in the locker room, find out their team, go out for their tee time, play a match, and come back in, and everybody commiserates. One of the really, really neat things about the SWAT is they have kept detailed records dating back to 1955. And in this display case here, you have all the SWAT books with every record of the SWAT dating back to 1955 all the way to today. Meticulously kept records. How much money has been exchanged? How many points were earned that day? The teams. It's not just the members that play. Guests play in it ahead of the US Open. A lot of the professionals will play in it. In fact, our book from 1973, right before the US Open, features Arnold Palmer and Julius Burroughs, who would go on to be the 54-hole leaders of the tournament. And they played in that SWAT immediately preceding the 1973 US Open. One of the other neat features is, you can look along the ceiling here and you'll see playing cards with dollar bills tacked to the ceiling. And this actually, one of our members is friends with a magician, that this is his famous card trick that, he not exactly sure the mechanics of it, but somehow you sign your card, you put it back in the deck with a dollar bill. He does this trick, you shoot it up with a rubber band and it sticks to the ceiling. And you'll notice that there's, a few random bills up there, but there's only one that's framed. And if you look at the gentleman that signed that ace, it's Arnold Palmer. And that's Arnold Palmer's dollar bill and his card from that particular magic trick. This is known as the Champions Grill. On the wall behind me, you can see there's a photo of each one of our 20 national champions here at Oakmont. But one of the really, really cool things about this room is the floor that we're walking on. This is the original hardwood floor dating back to the opening of the club in 1904. And if you look, just like the benches in the locker room, you can see those little black pock marks that are literally the footsteps of champions. Bobby Jones, Ben Hogan, Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, Tiger Woods have literally left their footprints on this floor here at Oakmont.
To me, this is one of the most masterful elements of the entire building. The use of what's called Roman brick, these thin bricks, which I might note were very popular with Frank Lloyd Wright, who was actually starting his career right about the time that Stotts was designing this building. As we've seen in other buildings around town by Stotts, the use of brick in different ways. So right above the fireplace, it's vertical to create a kind of almost like a little keystone effect. And then this wonderful wood carving that surmounts the actual fireplace with the OG arches that terminate in these little fleur-de-lis elements. So it is a really great sort of incorporation within the interior of the design aesthetic of the exterior.
The bar here actually isn't original to this room. It was originally at a bar downtown called Froggy's. And when Froggy's closed about 15, 20 years ago now, a couple of our members were very good friends with the owner, and they decided to buy Froggy's Bar. And the reason being is this is European made, but it dates to 1903, which of course is the year that Oakmont was founded. So the bar here is a vintage of the same age of the club. And what's really neat is if you can hit the angle right with the light on the mirrors, you can still see some of the old chalk and marker lettering of, you know, the specials for that day and things like that. And then the other great feature is this picture here of our 9th hole from the 1927 US Open. So right here, this is Bobby Jones putting, which, you know, the green is right here to my right. And tending the flag is W.C. Fownes Jr., who was the son of Oakmont's founder, Henry Fownes, but also at the point of this picture was the president of the USGA. It's just such a unique piece, and really a piece of Pittsburgh history that was saved after Froggy's closed their doors for the last time. Pittsburgh it's one of the best cities in the world. Oakmont's one of the best clubs in the world, and the relationship between the two is so special. You know, we're founded on, you know, Pittsburgh steel with Henry Fownes' earlier career in the steel industry, and, you know, all the titans of Pittsburgh industry from the first days of the club really till now. You know, the titans of industry here in the city are members here. You know, you think of Pittsburgh as this great sports city with the Steelers and the Penguins and the Pirates the last 120 years. And, you know, Oakmont's no different. We are a major part of this the city of champions, as we're known. 10 US Opens, 21 national championships as of this June. You know, our history here is just another important piece of the fabric of sports history in Pittsburgh and Pittsburgh's overall history.
This space really exemplifies the domestic character of the clubhouse as a whole that Stotts was seeking. You have a staircase that you could find in any home of, you know, middle class or upper middle class home at the time. Baluster, nothing at all ornamental or extraordinary about it, but you have this sense of, you can imagine people coming down these steps prepared to play golf at the turn of the 20th century and making a kind of entrance here, almost as if there's a kind of procession down to the golf course.
So one of the things that has been sort of lost to history here at Oakmont is the history of the furrowed bunkers. So when the course was first founded, the sand bunkers was not, you know, your prototypical golf sand that you're used to today. The original bunkers here were filled with river sand from the nearby Allegheny River. So it was coarse, it was dense, it was pebble filled. And the way that they raked it to really create a true penalty for finding a bunker is what they called the furrows. So this rake right here, which weighs about 50 pounds, features 4-inch long steel tines, and you would rake the bunker perpendicular to the hole, and it would create these furrows that you can see here in this fantastic picture from 1953. And what it would ultimately create is these ridges here. And imagine your golf ball lands in it, and you're going to be in between one of these ridges. The only way to get clear contact on the ball would be to pitch out sideways, which is what the Fownes intended you to do. If you tried to advance the ball forward, you would have had to go through this mound to get to the ball and then through this furrow as well, making it very, very difficult to actually get out of any bunker. So really, on a golf course that has no water or anything like that, the bunkers were the true penalty. And as far as the Fownes were concerned, a shot misplayed was a shot irrevocably lost. So if you found the bunker, what they wanted you to do was to chip out. And it became such a controversy that in 1953, the players actually threatened to boycott the US Open until there was an agreement made that the furrows would be taken out of the fairway bunkers but remain around the greenside bunker. So if you look at this picture right here, you can see this is our pro Lou Worsham at the time hitting out of the furrows around a greenside bunker during the 1953 US Open. The Fowneses believed in a true Darwinian test of man versus golf course. Many boys that would come up every spring hoping to be caddies, and if they couldn't lift that rake, they weren't ready to be a caddy quite yet this year. These are the 4 championship trophies of the USGA championships we've hosted at Oakmont that we are allowed to display. So the 2 here on the left are the Havemeyer trophies that are awarded annually to the champion of the US Amateur. This trophy here on the left, this more Victorian era trophy, is the original Havemeyer that was awarded from 1895 through 1925. The last time this trophy was awarded was here to Bobby Jones at the 1925 US Amateur. Following his win, he took the trophy home to East Lake Golf Club, and tragically the trophy was lost in a fire that November. And the following year, the USGA had to come up with a new trophy, and they created this more modern, sleek design of the trophy here on the right. So since we have hosted a US Amateur prior to and post 1926, we are allowed to display both versions of the Havemeyer trophy. And then when you come down here, these are our replicas for the 2 Opens. Of course, the Men's US Open trophy here on the left-hand side, and then the Harton S. Semple trophy awarded annually to the champion of the US Women's Open on the right-hand side. Each of these 4 trophies are 90% scale replicas. They're created by a silversmith firm out of London. And we are one of only 3 clubs in the United States that can display these 4 trophies. It's us, Baltusrol in New Jersey, and then Newport Country Club in Rhode Island. This is my favorite room in the clubhouse. It's where I spend the most time because it's where most of our history sits. This is what we call History Hall. This hallway here is dedicated to each of our now 10 US Open championships. Each US Open gets a display case filled with memorabilia from the champion and the championship, as well as photographs from the event above it. Each one of these display cases was actually just renovated over the winter. So we're showing off about 75% of the photos are new photos. A lot of the stuff in the display cases are new pieces that both the members and the guests haven't seen maybe ever. It truly is one of the most special places in the club and really shows off the tournament history here at Oakmont. So this display case here is to the 1935 US Open, which we talked about a little earlier with Sam Parks, the Pittsburgh native that really was a dark horse Cinderella story when he claimed the national championship here in 1935. But one of my favorite artifacts and one with one of the best stories behind it happens to be this ticket in the display case. So during the 1935 US Open, it was uncovered that there was a counterfeit ticket operation going on during the first round of the championship when about 1,500 tickets were sold by the club in the USGA and 4,000 people showed up. And the newspapers at the time highlighted the story as well as the championship, saying that the counterfeits were so good that the only way you could tell whether they were a fake ticket or a real ticket was the coloring around the edge was slightly off, and the hole punch for the string to attach to your lapel was slightly bigger than the actual tickets. So this is the only example of a 1935 US Open ticket that we have here at the club. I have no idea if it's a real ticket or if it's one of the counterfeits. And I think it's one of the best stories that we have in this hallway. You know, the periscopes were before the grandstands. That's how you saw when the crowds were 10, 12, 15 people deep. So you hold it up, there's 2 mirrors in there, and you would get to see the action over the people in front of you. So this picture's from the 1962 US Open, but we have one from the 1953 Open in that display case. And we do actually have one of these down in the archives. So this display case is for the 1973 US Open here at Oakmont, which is arguably our most famous championship to date because of what Johnny Miller accomplished on Sunday that year when he shot that magical 63. The best piece of this display case is the putter that came from Johnny Miller himself. And it's an old bullseye putter that is marked Johnny M, as you can see there. And if you look, it is the exact putter that he used to win the US Open, because here he is putting out on 18, and you can very clearly see that putter in full view of the camera. It was given to us directly from Johnny Miller a number of years ago. It's arguably one of the best pieces that we have here at the club in our collection, and it's always prominently shown right here in History Hall. This is the 2007 US Open display case honoring Angel Cabrera for his victory here. that year. And, of all the great things that we have in these display cases, from clubs from the champions and, the old-fashioned periscopes and things like that, sentimentally, personally, my favorite artifacts are these two cigarette butts that are in the display case. So my endearing memory of the 2007 US Open, especially that final round, is Angel Cabrera smoking cigarettes between every single shot throughout that round. And when we put these display cases together and we got the caddy bib from Mr. Cabrera, in the front pocket was all of those Marlboro cigarette butts. And, I remember sitting home watching that championship as a teenager, and that enduring memory of him just constantly smoking to calm his nerves. And, it's just such a silly but important part of that story and an important part of that championship. So when you come through History Hall, you look in the 2007 display case, you will see a couple of those cigarette butts in there with his caddy bib. And it, to me, is just such an important part of the story. So this room here is actually one of the newest rooms in the clubhouse. This area between the ballroom and History Hall, this room, what we call the Fownes Room, has been changed and alterated a number of times over the last 100 years or so. And this room was specifically created as a corporate hospitality room to overlook the first tee for a US Open. But it's dedicated to our founders, Henry Fownes and his son, William C. Fownes Jr., who would go on to be president of the USGA. So the room features artifacts from the two of them, highlighted here by this wonderful painting that was created about 10 years ago by Tom Pinch, showing father and son from an original picture of the first golf team here at Oakmont from 1903. And then the display cases here feature various artifacts related to the Fownes family. Some of the best are in this case here, including this small medal on the top shelf. That is W.C. Fownes' USGA President's Badge. And we actually have a photo right around the corner, and you can see it on his lapel as he presents the US Open trophy to Bobby Jones in 1926 as USGA president. And then tucked away in the corner here, but certainly still of massive importance, this is the original rendering of the clubhouse that was created by Edward Stotts in 1902 for Henry Fownes. So as you can see here, the color is a little different. It's more of a beige, but you have that wraparound porch that was originally constructed, and then eventually this would be turned into the sitting room off of the current porches. But this is what Edward Stotts had originally designed for Henry Fownes, and this is what eventually came to be in 1904. This room here is what we call the Fownes Library. All golf books on the right side here. The library here is dedicated more to W.C. Fownes, and some of the really neat things that we have on display are his gold medals from his various wins. So in here we have some of his gold medals from his Western Pennsylvania Golf Amateur Championship victories and the Pennsylvania State Amateur Championship, which he won 4 times, and he won the West Penn Amateur 8 times in his career. We have some more of his medals on the other wall. Couple of his photos from when he was USGA president, and if you remember back to the Fownes Room, that little lapel medal on his lapel, as you can see here in that picture as he presents the trophy to Bobby Jones, it's right there on his lapel. And then we have this great portrait of WC in front of the clubhouse as it looked back in the day. W.C. Fownes is arguably one of the most important people in American golf history that kind of gets overlooked in an era of the great amateur champions such as Jones and Ouimet and Jerome Travers and Chick Evans. But, W.C. Fownes was probably a top 10 player in the country during his era. He won the U.S. Amateur in 1910. He won 8 Western Pennsylvania Amateur titles, 2 West Penn Open titles, 4 Pennsylvania Amateur titles, helped get the Walker Cup going, played on the Pennsylvania Leslie Cup team a number of times. And then, as his playing days loomed, became an executive committee member with the USGA, vice president, and eventually president of the USGA. So, W.C. Fownes is arguably one of the most important figures in early American golf history, and here he's very, very important to us. So we're in one of the new dorm rooms here in the clubhouse. This entire third floor was redone last year to create 12 new overnight rooms for members and their guests. So we're currently sitting in the 1983 room. Each of the 12 rooms are numbered after our US Opens and our US Women's Open. And all the photos in each room correspond with that particular championship. So of course we have a picture of Larry Nelson from 1983. It was totally common when a clubhouse was built that there would be overnight accommodation rooms. A lot of them were actually for the general manager and some of the staff, but there was always rooms available for the membership. Here in particular, there was probably about 10 rooms that were available for overnight stay for the members because, again, in 1904, this is out in the country. If you missed the last train to Pittsburgh, which I believe was about 7:30 each evening, you were stuck here. So you at least had a room to stay overnight with some good accommodations. And the club is trying to continue that to this day. We could sleep about 40 guests overnight on the property, including 12 in the clubhouse. Your entire experience is here. You don't have to leave to go stay in a hotel. You don't have to leave for meals. You literally come in the front gate and your entire experience is right here. And for Oakmont, it's such a huge part of the experience. The golf course is always going to be first and foremost, but they want your experience with your dining and your accommodations to be just as top notch as what they put in on the golf course.